Okay. Hello, hello. I think we're live. Yeah, we're live. We're live. How are you, everybody? Today is the masterclass number 4 of this New Year Christmas challenge. So, in this lesson, we're going to talk about a little bit of theory. We're going to dive in some study session of ICM study on final table. What are the main drivers of the strategies? How the solver think these strategies? We're going to use GTO Wizard for this. So also it's going to work as a tutorial if you don't use GTO Wizard to study. And also remember the challenge, as I stated before, the Christmas challenge of volume, where you can join on the Standard Banking Discord. Is all the information. Um, this is the challenge of getting more volume on Champion Poker, which is a pretty good site because it's a neutral site. The field is soft. There's a good tournament, so players interested in having like a low variance schedule or mixing some low variance tournament with easy field with big variance tournament. So it's a pretty good site. So I recommend it, and also the prices are pretty good. You will have 3 lessons with me, the first place, and also CNC tokens, coins. So you can change for lessons on CNC, which probably is one of the best coaching sites with high stakes players. So yeah. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about, as I stated before, ICM, the main drivers of our strategy. And what I did in GTO Wizard is pick some spots with 8 left, with 6 left, with 4 left, and dive in some situations. And yeah, try to come with a strategy and try to come with more so than a strategy, try to come with the heuristics of what are the main drivers, as I said before, of the of the three variants of the values, etc. So this is a hand that this is a spot that I use a lot to coach because it can teach us a lot about risk premium. So in the lesson before, the masterclass number 3, on the bubble, we talked about the how the bubble or the ball factor is making us or drive us the strategy from one way to another, to be super passive or to be super aggressive. So in the final table, the same happens, and this is a interesting spot where we have a player with 61 blinds, but also we have a 12, 16. Also, we have 68, 52. We have the bottom with 8 blinds and the big blind, 37 small, and the big blind with 64. So we can imagine that this player versus this player has to be pretty tight. That this player probably is going to have the low bubble factor versus all, that probably this player versus this one is going to have the biggest bubble factor. So this guy has to play quite passive versus this one, and this one has to play pretty passive versus this one and versus this one. So this is mainly the idea. So we can check out this on the bubble factors, and we can see the extra equity that given range needs. So for example, big blind, um, let's see, like UTG versus big blind is around 19 equity extra. So you have to, for making a call, UTG needs 20% extra of equity. So the strategy has to be quite passive. But also the big blind has OTG because they can hurt a lot the stack, about 17. So these two players has to play, the UTG versus big blind has to play quite passive. For example, the big blind versus hijack is quite high, 20%. So we can imagine here that the big blind has to play quite passive versus the hijack, and the hijack has also some high risk premium. The one that we thought that is going to have the lowest risk premium is going to be, in this case, the bottom. In general, the bottom is going to have the lowest risk premium because it's the last in chips. So it don't also play like GPP, but kinda not so close. But yeah, he needs like +7, +4, etc. So that make us the strategy of the bottom, not the standard, but close to what we think. But for example, hand UTG versus big blind is going to be quite interesting in terms of ranges. Also, like a hand between hijack versus big blind is going to be quite interesting. How the big blind is going to construct the range. So in this hand, we're going UTG versus big blind. And the first thing we saw is that big blind is not three betting kings nor queens. Uh, it doesn't want to three bet ace king suited, and it's mostly three betting aces, ace king O, and some bluffs with ace XO. And what is most interesting here is the sizing. The sizing is 16 blinds. Yeah, 16 blinds, which is 8x. So yeah, this is quite weird, but and also it's not like okay we have to play as the solver, but the idea is to have okay when we are in these super high risk premiums, our value treasure is going to stretch a lot, even though that we don't want to 3-bet call with kings because the AV versus the 4-betting range is not going to be too high. And the direct implication of that is that we are going to 3-bet to a big size, a huge size. So in this case, we can use this idea again, not that we have to play like 16, blah, blah, but the idea, okay, we can 3-bet quite large. And then the other thing is that when we are running hands in holding resources, for example, if your goal is to become a professional poker player and study like a professional, you will need to run this kind of software. So when you run like a hand with holding resources, you can program the hand to have these large sizes and see what the correct answer is. So yeah, this is quite interesting. Also, the possible play might be also quite interesting. So the idea is make the pot super huge versus the hand he can fold the UTG because probably is not going to bluff too much, and yeah, just put it in a super comfortable position when the UTG has a hand like jacks or tens or whatever. So yeah, we go huge, and this is the defense of under the gun. He should fold jacks. He just only call queens, kings, and aces. It's never showing only ace kings. So also again, interesting. Also, we can see here that, for example, what changes if the opener is covering the big blind. How much the big blind can now 3-bet with these huge stacks versus these small stacks on in this scenario. The big blind again is only 3-betting aces. Interesting enough, is shoving 16 blinds, 64 blinds with ace king, which is again quite strange. We don't see solution of just jamming 60 blinds with ace king O or ace king suited. But the idea again is we are 3-betting just not too many combos. In this case, just aces with the bluffs of ace XO. And the sizing again is going to be huge, 16 blinds and all in, which is weird, right? Just having like a 65 all in, and we can see how much EV, like for example, 0.33, but let's see on money. Sorry, here. 0.32. So yeah, is okay, like the jamming and um, the 3-bet is making 0.3. So yeah, it's winning the double, shoving here again, 65 blinds. Is quite strange, right? And if we shove 65 blind, is okay. What the hijack can do? We probably only call with aces and kings. Let's see. Yeah, and it's kings. Interesting. He prefers to call size kings rather than kings, which is quite strange. But again, this is a solver land, and this is a play that is not going to happen in real life, but is quite interesting. Again, the idea. The first idea, which is interesting, is one, the value thresholds. So how big can we go, and how much are our value thresholds? Like, okay, how much I can value versus this spot where I have a huge risk premium because it's close to 20 or 20 it was, yeah, big blind versus hijack is 20%. So yeah, and we can see a lot of stuff like this, like having, okay, so how the hijack three betting range versus UTG, where he has a lot of full equity, probably a lot of aces, a lot of ace X suited low. So yeah, it's raising a lot of aces and some kings, which, well, again, is interesting, and it's something to point out. Like, when we are in final tables and when we are in high risk premium environments, the bluffs are mainly coming from ace X suited low, king X suited lows, and ace XO. Mostly all not all the bluffs, but if we have bluffs, they're going to have this polar component that is going to have the clear all-in calls and the clear all-in folds, and the rest is just calling because this hand doesn't want a tiered fold nor tiered call. And ICM, these polar strategies tend to become more clear. So, for example, if we go here, let's see, open end like a small blind. Again, ace X suited, low with some king X. Here, hijack, low jack, sorry, which is covered. Again, ace X low. If we go, low jack is opening and the hijack is rebetting. Again, ace XO, king XO. If we go, low hijack is opening and the small blind is still rebetting. Again, ace XO, I mean ace X suited and some king X suited. And again, this is a scenario, huge size, a few combos, and when we are on the big blind, we're going to be polar, but as we have such a good price on the big blind, our polar strategy is going to come from low kicker, good kicker, low card, and top range. So yeah, that's the idea. If you have any idea, you can chat on the chat. I mean, you can type on the chat, and I'll gladly answer any situation that you have. So, for example, sorry, how can I go from here? So, for example, if we want to check out a little bit of post-flop play, so how the UTG has to play versus the big blind in this scenario when the big blind calls. So we go here. I'm going to give UTG let's give two sizes because sometimes here is go huge. We can go like this. Two sizes, I think is okay. And here you can change the ranges. Here you can change the stacks we have already, and here you can change the player profile. Right now we're going to just focus on GTO strategy and going from there. So yeah, we go here, and then here we can ask for a random board, or just we can start like, for example, a quite not basic but ace high disconnected board, and see how the frequencies of, especially the UTG, which is covered with a super high risk premium, how is the strategy made. We see we are betting, but still we are checking quite a lot in this board. Also, we can use sometime the solver like to bet huge on this board, like 125, and see if it like to bet like because it doesn't like the 80, just huge. Also, that's something that I like to check. And no, the main bet is going to be a small bet. And also we can see how the big blind is supposed to defend. I think this big blind can raise a lot in small size because of the risk premium. Yeah, and again, we can use even like giving two sizes to see if prefer to going like this or going a little bit like this. Again, this is for you guys that if you want to use GTO Wizard and try to use different strategies, yeah, whatever. So you can take this situation, right? Um, and you can change sizes, and that's a good thing of AI with this, that you can start playing a lot with this. And mainly the size that I like is bigger. It doesn't like too much the small size. Also here we can check, like for example, um, what happened in other kind of board, like a little bit more of a um, big size check probably, I think, from the big line, because it is just going to have, no, it's like small size. Nice, nice. And here we can go, okay, what happened if we add big size, which probably is not going to like the big size because um, it's covered and it doesn't want to blow up the pot. So probably it will not like any big size. And then we can go here and then we can go random. So, and trying to figure it out how the size is going to be, is still going to be big, small, and going from there. But we can see like a general tendency. Um, the OTG likes to bet small, doesn't like to do the pot big. And yeah, it's going to be the main bet. Now, interesting to see what happened with a board that is quite more connected, like this. For example, the dunking range, how the big blind is going to dunk here, if it's going to dunk in a high frequency, is choosing like a huge, huge size that the big blind I give all the sizes is almost overbetting the size. Um, in this situation, I like to do this. And this is a way that you can try to see if the solver is okay, or you can come with another strategy. For example, come with a little bit more normal dunking range. Let's say, okay, I want to dunk small here. We're going to strike this. We're going to go here. After this, we're going to see how the frequencies changes, and then we can see now we're betting mostly range, right? And then we can start seeing what plays better in terms of EV versus solver. So we go click here, and if we see the current is making more EV rather than the past one, even though the solver start with a donking huge size, and that strategy is losing. So it's not because the solver says that here is a 10 big blind over bet big blind solution is the best solution. We have to double check it, try different sizes, and try to see what are the right the main drivers again. And this situation we can bet here, and probably the OTG has to play. Yeah, it has to defend like this, and probably if we strike some of these hands, like if we strike 100%, like queen 10 suited with clubs, that is calling 80%. If we strike 100% the king queens, if we strike some ace 10, some ace 9s without backdoor flush draw, I think that donking here range is going to print probably. It's going to perform better. But again, it's like the main driver we're covering. Yeah. In this situation now, we can see what happened here again. But now we're going to play versus the hijack, and the hijack is covering the big line, and see what happened if now the hijack goes for bigger sizes, or for example, is still the big line is going to dunk a lot in boards that should dunk a lot. So we're going like this again. We were dunking range with a small size, so we're now going to repeat the experiment. Now he's dunking a small size, and probably is going to dunk a lot too. Here with a small size. And then we go with the A7 III and some queen 7-5 to see. Again, it is still dunking a lot, and is mainly the main driver is the not only the equity but the not to not distribution. That if we go here, we have 16 combos of straight. Hijack has straight. It doesn't have a straight. No, no straight. So yeah, it doesn't have a straight. Here again, 2 pairs, 12 combos. 2 pairs, 2 combos. So that's why now the big blind is betting a lot here. And again, let's check out like a board like this. If now the big blind likes to bet not 25, but I don't know, like 40ish and range because it's covering and now wants to bet make the pot bigger. But no, it's mostly the same. Again, it is not checking kings and queens the frequency that it was checked before, but it still is finding those bets. Let's see here. This is an interesting one, where the big blind has a lot of fives here, and the hijack has some. But yeah, interesting is checking range here because not to not distribution, the big line has more nuts. We can see here breakdown, trips 52, hijack trips 14. So there's like this difference. But again, I would like to see what happened if I add a 25% bet. How the frequency change, and again we can double check the DV. So now we're betting like we're mixing quite a lot, which makes the strategy quite difficult. For example, they're not like pure bets, mostly ace kings, but all the hands are mainly mixed. It's not like a clear tendency. But we can now see here. And the current is losing. Prefers a huge size or check in this scenario, just checking range and start with the checking range. So quite interesting in paired board where the big line has more of this. If we go paired board but like kings, now we're going to expect the cutoff hijack, sorry, in this case to be betting range, right? Because now the hijack has a lot of kings. And yeah, now we're betting range. So this is interesting on the paired boards where we want to, especially in ICM on high risk premium scenario, we want to see who has the card that is doubled. The one that has the double card can go super aggressive. So again, in this scenario, I mean, in this same final table, we can find probably solutions where like low jack opening here, the big nine covering, and flops probably paired boards where now the big blind I think can start dunking a lot, especially if we go with a good size, a small size probably. It's betting. He's betting big and he's betting a lot, so it's going to be interesting to see what he prefers, like to go over bet versus this guy with this size or small. Um, he prefers the over bet. Quite interesting. Imagine having 50 blinds. This board comes and the player is over betting like almost 2x pot. I don't know when was the last time you faced something like this, but again, that's something that we can consider, right? That pair board when we are covering, and the player has a huge risk premium versus all, and we have a huge not to not advantage. I mean, we can attack a lot because the big line has. I think it doesn't have only have two combos of fives, ace fives. Probably is king five is folding. Ace five off is folding. 6-5. So I think it has only two combos. And the big blind is going to have like 60, 64, and trips. Yeah, two combos are going to be the ace suited. So it is a massive difference. It's a massive difference. So we don't only have a massive difference of nuts, but this player again, if we try to think on the risk premium, there were 8 big blinds stacks. They were at 16, so he might have versus us like 18, 17%. 18. So yeah, he has to call with 18% more versus when we go huge. And the question here is when we are facing a player that is overbetting huge in this kind of situations, what are we doing, for example, with nines, tens? Are we calling one? Are we giving up? Do we have enough price with those hands? So yeah, we can go here. And we are mostly going, yeah, all sevens and eights is mostly indifferent. These are mostly indifferent. So we can see here. Yeah, it's like queen plus. The rest of the hand are running quite slim. Yeah, in this chart with the color, the greens are clear ones. I even prefer to call ace four, which is interesting, rather than jacks. I mean, it's quite interesting that jacks is making 0.58 and ace four is 0.95. I mean, it's better to call with these hands rather than jacks. It's better to call with ace four rather than ace deuce. So yeah, I see. The FT is, I mean, the ICM risk premium, high risk premiums. The strategy is like quite interesting. And again, is this a scenario where, well, it's hard to remember that we have to dunk to 180 in this kind of boards, but it's not that hard to remember that in scenarios where the player that we are facing has a huge risk premium versus us, and we are in a board, especially defending from the big blind, where it's a paired board, and we cover, we can start dunking a lot. And not only if we have not to not ratio, I mean, yeah, not to not advantage on paired boards, but not to not advantage on given board like this one. Like the big, I mean, the hijack is not opening 7-4 nor 7-5, it's not opening 6-8. So, and all these hands, the big blind is defending. So, yeah, we're betting range, mostly range. And it goes quite good. Why in this board? We're going range and small. And in the other one, we're going huge with a lot of hands. But not range, is because a concept that in this board we have a lot of good hands. We have a lot of all equity because of the risk premium. So we tend here to develop what we call a merge strategy. So a merge strategy is when we are betting like everything. We're betting the strong hands, we're betting mid strong hands, we're betting huge hands. So in this scenario, we want to protect, for example, when you have a 9-4, we want to dunk to protect the 4. In this scenario, when we have 7-6, we want to some value but still protect the hand. When we have queens, jacks, we want to value our hand. When we have the 9 suited, we want to fold better hands. So that's why we can bet like a lot. In the other scenario, like with the 5-5-3, 5-5-2, it's a huge size because now our range is going to be polar. It's going to be a lot of huge hands with the 5 or hands that have some backdoor equity. So that's why we choose this size. And it's interesting to see. And it'll be interesting to run like here like reports and try to come with how the dunking range is developed. how's the frequency of the dunking range, and what are the main words that we are dunking. Like, is better to dunk like a paired board, or is better to dunk like connected board? Probably connected board with a low. So yeah, it is going to be interesting. Also, see if, for example, this guy is betting like ace with two lows, or is betting big, or does he bet bigs sometimes? And yeah, check this spot out. Like the low jack doesn't want to bet never. And again, we can go and yeah, think okay, he's not betting never because he's covered and you have only one size. So we can go this, we can do this, and then what we do is try to see um, this, and prefers to check range. It doesn't like to bet small. This is the previous, this one is the previous, this one is the actual. The actual is losing, so it prefers to check range, which is interesting. And again, if we are on the big line and we are facing a player that is betting small in this scenario, and we think that he's betting more than he should, yeah, we can attack probably with any kicker hard and raise a lot, because he can defend like too much. So, for example, if we, I don't know if the nut blocks weren't working that well today. I don't know why. Let's see what happened. It should print everything orange. Let's see. No, it's I don't know what's happening, but it's not working. So yeah, it's a shame. But yeah, no, it doesn't matter. Um, so the main idea remains constant in this scenario. Again, the bluffs mostly coming with ace x suited, some king x suited. The risk premiums are stretching our value thresholds, are making our sizes a little bit bigger, quite big, 8x, 6x, 7x. And post flop, again, the risk premiums are the main drivers of our strategy. So that's quite interesting. We can see this situation now, where, for example, we have a mega chip leader and we have three blinds. Like in this scenario, it's like to think, does the big blind, I mean, does the UTG with 55 has all-ins, uh, because this guy has three big blinds, or it's only raising small? What happen if this guy opens and comes to here? Does this guy is three betting ace king suited, or is just calling, or is shoving ace king O? So in this scenario, we can start like developing our own models and then compare it. So for example, do we jump here a king six suited from UTG in this scenario? I said that maybe yes. I don't remember. No. A little bit, but it's mostly shoving. Is shoving some hands, which is quite interesting. Some ace x and some king x, a little bit of pairs, not that much of going like this. Uh, Probably when we are raising the small blind, again, it probably is going to come huge. Some ace x as bluffs, and again here the same tendency. Now we go here. And we have all-ins, ace kings, and kings is calling, aces is raising, and again ace x low suited are the main bluffs. So again, is interesting, and the size is 5x, 5x or all-in. So again, this is a quite interesting spot where we can see again value thresholds, how the player is playing. For example, in this scenario, what happens if the cutoff opens and the bottom folds? Does the small blind can start shoving? I don't know. Again, let's use a hand like king six suited just to fold ace king, because I imagine that the cutoff versus small blind should have some quite risk premium. So we go here, cutoff versus small blind 19. So yeah, it's quite big. So the small blind the cutoff raise, the small blind here. The small blind is shoving a lot, like aces in king 6, king 5, king 4, king 3, king 2. He's shoving all these sixes. He's bluffing all this hand, and he's bluffing now the king suited low. So when you hear players saying that ICM is for poor people, probably they are never shoving 28 blinds with king deuce suited. So because this is quite difficult to pull off, to remember. Not only that, because it's not the process of I know what I have to do, but also the willingness of doing it, of knowing, okay, in this scenario with the 28 big blinds, I have 35. The cutoff probably is not going. I mean, again, if we jump here 28 big blinds, the big blind falls. What are the worst hand that the cutoff calls when the cutoff needs a 20% extra equity versus our jam? So it's not only playing for chips because yeah, there is premium. So now in this scenario, the cutoff needs plus 20. So we want and versus the range, right? And we choose these hands aces low and king x low because most of the combos of the calling range of the cutoff is going to come from ace and king highs. Well, not king highs, but only ace with a king and stuff like this. So we can go here all in. We can go on the cutoff. The threshold is jacks. So has the 9 combos of jacks, the 9 combos of queens. I mean, sorry, the 6 combos, 6 combos, 6 combos, and the rest with aces. So the main combos, I mean, with the kings and the ace kings and the aces, we have like 80% of the combos are calling with an ace or some kings. So that's why we use this strategy. And it still has some queen x. And is this like property of having the pretty high hands as inducing, the other hands as shoving, the mid strength hand as shoving, and then go polar with the worst hands with three-red falls. So it has the clear tier falls like with these hands, and the clear tier bet calls with these hands. So yeah, quite interesting this scenario again. And we can check out again like the bluffing ranges with ace x low here under the gun opens. OTG has some bluffs. Low jack versus UTG has some bluffs again. Ace x low. Hijack has some 4x racing with aces and some ace x suited low with just super low frequency. Cutoff, we are going to imagine are going to have again these parts, some of these as bluffs. Again, bottom is going to play super lineal. A small blind with 3. Again, ace x suited low. And the big blind again, super lineal with some calls. Linear is just the strong hands. So yeah, interesting spot. Interesting to see how the risk premiums are developing here, our strategy, our ranges, our sizes, and our frequencies on the flop. Again, the idea is not to learn this, is to use the logic, use the principles, use the big sizes, the checking a lot, the donking a lot, and try to develop strategies. And again, yeah, versus what kind of player we are facing. Yeah. So here I mark this scenario. Sorry. Something happened with the wizard. And this is an area again, which is kind of cool. Cool if we are not in the final table facing difficult decisions. But again, this is a decision here where everyone is short and there's a big stack. How, for example, in this situation, how the big stack is just punishing like the change of folding, like this guy want to fold because of this guy and this guy and this guy. This guy want to fold because of this guy. I mean, of this guy and the stack of this guy, and this guy wants to fold because of the stack of these guys. So the cutoff now is taking advantage of this, and can shove a lot. And again, quite interesting. What are we calling on the bottom when we face a player that is shoving queen deuce suited, that is shoving 5-4 suited, that is shoving ace-x suited? I mean ace-x. So are we calling with sevens? Are we calling with six? Are we folding those hands? What are the best ace-x-o that we are calling? What are the best ace-x suited that we calling? Are we calling with king-queen suited? Those are the main questions you need to do. Try to come with an answer and see if the answer is close or not. If the answer is not close, it's a spot that we can study. If not, yeah, I mean, if it is okay, so be it. So perfect. So yeah, this scenario probably, I don't know, like first I try to imagine the risk premium. Probably in this situation, the risk premium cutoff, bottom versus cutoff is going to be like plus 16. It's not super high because we are kind of similar, but at the same time, it's not going to be small. So the first thing is try to come with risk premium estimation of the risk premium. So I try to do the estimation, and we go here cutoff versus bottom versus cutoff. We go in 17. I think I say 15. I was wrong. I think with a couple, something like this. So yeah, if I'm in 17, I think we're going plus nines and ace jack suited, ace king o, ace queen o. I think. Let's see. And we're going nines. I mean, sorry, here versus all in, this versus the all in. We're going tens, tens, tens. Nines is indifferent. Ace jack suited, ace queen o. So I was wrong. I was okay with the ace jack suited. I was wrong with the ace king o, and I was wrong with the nine. So I'm probably cutting a pip off here, like a couple of combos more. And yeah, it's difficult, right? But this is why the all-in is so effective, because when we are shoving, if we don't have like queen deuce suited, this guy has to fold nines, and this guy has to fold sevens, sixes, and this guy has to fold a lot. What changes if the players are calling more? And you say, well, I'm facing players that are calling more, so now we're shoving less, because these shovings are making less EV. Because the think of this shoving is creating full equity, and if we are not developing enough full equity, so yeah, it doesn't work. So we can go around and try to see what happened if we are raising, how they supposed to defend. If we think they are under defending, like not shoving all of these ace suited, not shoving as they should. So we can go and start just mixing those hands as small raises too. But again, the idea remains the same. We have a situation, we will have a pretty good risk premium for us, and a player that have quite a difficult situation. So, yeah, sorry. There's a concept that is called risk premium, but this concept is, does we have a linear or symmetrical risk premium, or do we have a asymmetrical risk premium? So in asymmetrical risk premium is, for example, in this scenario where the cutoff versus the bottom here is 6, but the bottom versus the cutoff is 17, so it's almost triple. So this is an asymmetrical situation. But if we go like low jack versus the bottom is 12, and the bottom versus low jack is 14, because are similar stacks. So when we are in a symmetrical situation, we don't have these super jumps, let's say. But when we are asymmetrical, we can go quite aggressive. So this is again an interesting scenario. Here, for example, this is quite funky. This is a scenario. I picked this scenario. Let's see it again because it's 5, 4, 7, 9. Chip leader, second in chips. So the idea here is how much the small blind is shoving? Does the small blind is shoving a lot? Does the small blind shove anything? Or now that the risk premium is probably symmetrical because though both players are with a huge stack, does this changes? So again, trying to come with concepts, trying to come with ideas, and if these ideas remain true, we can start developing our own strategies. So yeah, we go here directly to small blind and see how the small blind is playing. It's shoving like everything, and the small blind versus the big blind has a risk premium of 20, super high, but the big blind versus the small blind has a 25, which is one of the highest risk premium I ever seen. The the higher I saw was like 30, I think, once. So yeah, 25 is a lot. So if we're talking about 25, we're probably saying that the player on the big blind supposed to fold, I don't know, like jacks. It's just, no, king, ace kings is just calling pairs. Interesting. And we can see how much is calling with the pairs, like how much EV, like EV here. And it's doing, yeah, just fine. Just fine. And it's interesting to see how ace king is just pretty shitty in this scenario. And the jacks and tens is quite strong. And also it depends, right? Well, it's not only depends, it's also a function of the range distribution and range construction. Because if we go here and we see the strategy, the player is never showing his hands. So he's never showing tens, nine, eight. So tens is pretty good, jack is pretty good, but the player is shoving hands like jack seven, and jack seven versus ace king has some decent equity. 10-7 versus ace king has a decent equity. So that's why it only chooses these hands that has the best performance versus this shoving range, right? Especially this shoving range. We if we start adding some nines, eight, seven, sixes to the shoving range, a little bit more of ace jack, ace queens, ace jack, ace queens here over here. The shoving range here is, I mean, the calling range is it's going to underperform, and probably we're going to even fold in tens. So we can study this on the holding resources and use the scenarios, play with the scenarios and holding resources, and again try to come with strategies. Try to see how the game changes, how these again risk premiums are the main drivers of these strategies. And yeah, as I stated before, I think this with this hand we can end the session. I think we see a lot of stuff about risk premiums, how the main idea of this session was to that you guys to develop an idea of how important is this. And there are players that sometimes in a coaching, I am in the coaching, and they say I never consider the risk premiums of the strategy. I never thought about it, and is the main difference. I mean, tournaments versus cash. The main difference is the ICM and the risk premium. So, uh, impacts so greatly on the pre-flop strategy and impacts so greatly on the post-flop strategy and the calling range. So, having the idea of how much the bubble factor is and how this affect these strategies with heuristics that we try to work on is going to work well, right? It is pretty difficult. Poker is pretty difficult. The theory is pretty difficult. It's quite difficult to play the LEDs and having those shops and whatever. But yeah, the idea again is to have a good understanding of what are the drivers of the strategies, what can we do, what are big mistakes, and going from there. Yeah, just we can with that we can develop our own strategies and yeah, develop our own game and see what are the players are doing wrong and attack it, and respect when the players are doing good things. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this session. Hopefully see you soon. Remember to join the challenge playing on Champion Poker. The field is pretty soft, so yeah, if you're interested in play professionally and win some money, so it's a good way to pick good tournaments, good sites, soft fields. So yeah, see you around. Good luck, people.